Well, I was born February the 14th, 1922, at a little place called Houston. It's right near Modesto. I do remember moving over there to Santa Clara, from there to Santa Clara, and where my dad was in the dairy business. Most Portuguese, when they came over, that's what they were doing. And going to the, as I told you before, in a spring wagon to deliver milk, or cream rather. Anyway, from there I moved to Pinole. That's where I was raised, and that's where we raised crops and hay and everything, all with work horses. I was born just at the era of the buggy days. And I remember going down the country road down to the highway to pick up the doctor. The doctors used to make house calls then. And so we had a cart and we had a buggy. And we had some big horses which we worked the fields, made hay, and Heinz Company came along then and we planted some tomatoes for them. So my experience with horses was from the very start with work horses. And that's where all this originated.
What made you get into the riding the horses and wanting to show a horse? And
well, I was enamored with the horses, period, but particularly the riding horses. I guess because I saw our neighbor had a trainer that come in there and work a lot of colts for him. So at this point, that's when I really felt that I'd like to be a trainer, or at least have a decent horse that would spin and so forth. So that's where I got my start. And the same thing happened there is you could not learn from them. They would not show you anything.
Yes.
You had to run around the barn and watch them. And
like me watching you.
And they'd be watching you, so you didn't get much.
No, I was just, you wouldn't show me anything.
No.
But
so
what about when...
I turned out to be the same way, of course.
Yes. Where did you watch the guys? How did you pick up what...
Well, it's like everybody else. I think it's trial and error a little bit, but you had to be very careful on a horse, because you could create a bad habit in a hurry. I've always felt that a bad habit is a hell of a lot harder to overcome than if you start from scratch and go slowly. Because if you get that embedded in their head, it takes forever to get it out.
When I first started showing, there was Johnny and Harry and Tony, all you Portuguese guys.
Yeah.
And so how did you all come about doing the same thing? And
I often wonder about that. It's not an inherited thing. It's just I guess we foreigners were in a position where we had to work horses and stuff like that, and I think that's how it came about.
On the ranch, you were.
Out of necessity, I think, more than anything.
When you grew up, the horse was a necessity.
Was a necessity.
It was a necessity.
Absolutely.
So what built on that? Later on, it wasn't so much of a necessity, but it became a way of your life.
But your desire, the infinity of the horse, you became sort of prone to want to show the greatness of the horse itself. And I think that's what started it all, was a desire to promote the horse a little bit more. But in my case, I was overwhelmed with the ability of some of the horses, how they could rein and work and so forth. So that's what inspired me to go a step ahead.
When you were shipped off to the war and didn't have the horses, that must have been a void, huh, in your life?
Well, I left the farm. My dad and there were 6 kids, and they were using the horses and so forth. Yeah. So it wasn't totally that I just dismissed them. I missed them, of course.
Yeah, that's
but
what
it was. They were left behind with my dad and the.
But you didn't have
brothers.
one with you, huh?
Yeah.
So he didn't have to go.
I was very fortunate that I went through all of it. Yeah. And I never even thought about it until that goddamn Kaepernick and some of those one guys didn't want to stand up
for what you'd fought for.
Yeah.
Huh?
No,
Where did you fight, Johnny? War.
Initially in the Army.
Uh-huh.
I was trained at Monterey, San Luis Obispo, Camp Roberts.
Uh-huh.
And then they threw me across as a replacement in Casablanca. And then I just filled in where some comrade had been killed and so forth, you know. And then I went from there all the way to Sicily.
You were in England?
Yeah, England.
Uh-huh.
And that's where we practiced. If you didn't do a good job, the Jeep would die, and I drove one off the LST at the Cherbourg Peninsula, Normandy.
In Normandy? Huh?
Yeah, Normandy. And they wanted a proven division, an experienced division, to make the landing there. See, because we've been through a lot of wars.
And lucky to be back.
I'm very lucky to be back.
Yeah. When did you guys start like a training operation when everybody was working for a ranch basically?
Well,
When did the horse training thing start?
You did your training while working with the cattle, and that's it. I didn't have any clients or anything. It was just working, and I showed when I was at Duter's and did fairly well.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then from that branched off to Dana.
But then later on, you guys all had a training stable, like your place here, and
it was just
area. So
it was
what
one point
started
in
that?
time. It was mostly ranchers and enthusiasts that had the horses to show.
You were the icon to run down the fence. How working on the ranch and working the cows? You think that's what got you so good, going down the fence?
Well, I think so. I think I had a lot of cow savvy myself. You know, I could read a cow pretty decent, and I think it really helped. I think, but you have to have the horse that responds at
have to have a little
that
help.
time, you know. The fence work has been terrible. I think in the last few years, the horses run down, and I have to credit Ted Robinson from changing that. And the horse should lock that cow and come back out and get that cow again.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it was meant to be.
Right.
But they'd get that like that, and the horse is not in position to come out here, and then, so the cow goes down that way, and then they come back and make a turn. It's supposed to be cow control.
Yes.
And I'm an advocate of that.
Yes.
I don't believe that they should allow the horse to get around the thing.
Well, you go back to, you're talking about then and how a cow was supposed to be worked. What kind of the rule book says that? When did you guys, when did you start? Like, I know you were one of the first reined cow horse people, and you started the association, and what brought that about to start
Well, you
a
know,
group?
I'm probably the last member now of the Reined Cow Horse Association. You know,
The starting group.
a charter member, I guess you might call it. But anyway, it was designed to control the cow, and when he went down, you controlled her. And that first turn was the most devastating, because you had to get back around. And if your horse is not in position, you're not going to get around in time, because that cow will come out here. And that was not supposed to be that way. It was supposed to be, you go get the cow again before she goes to the corner, and not restart the horse.
Yes.
You see what I mean?
Yes, I do.
And I'm against that, really. I've always been, because if you got a truly good horse, the horse should lock the cow just like that, boom, and then go and come right out there.
Yeah, but
most of these horses stop, and then they're just standing there like and waiting for the green light or something, and by the time they get out of there, the cow's way down the road there.
we're behind, huh?
So anyway, that's part of the thing that I really that I don't believe in.
So, along the way, then you talk about the hackamore horses. How did you get to be the good hackamore man? And I know.
Well, just like I say, it was a matter of trying different things. You hear different people say this or that, and you kind of got thinking about it, and you try to use some of it to see if it worked.
Yeah.
And some did, some didn't. So it was like a trial and error type deal, but in a very modified way, though, not try to just do it. I probably was, I had more patience with horses than I did with people, by far. But the trial and error deal was just pull like that. And I found that by trying to collect a horse close to your body, and your hands is not so far apart, they were far easier to bridle. In other words, if you pull out like this and Tony, that's when he had a little trouble running. A horse, when he's totally broken, a hackamore should rein almost like a bridle horse. That's my theory.
I remember that Tony's horses were a lot different than your horses, and your horses were, like you say, a lot more like the horses today. Way back, those horses were all overbent a lot.
They were bent too much, and they were on an arc. There's no way they could turn. They turned the fannies as much as the other. I always try to get my horses stationary in the back. And by not pulling the head away around, they stayed straighter. And I thought in the bridle, they were sure a lot easier to cope with.
To put in the bridle in.
Yeah, the bridle. Sort of prescribed myself to do the initial thing and get it down pat before I started the speed. And that's what I think was a pattern that I used all the time. Make sure that they knew exactly what you wanted.
I think.
See, you can signal the horse, but you got to make damn sure that they ascertain what you want. If they don't, you're all mixed up, and thing. But once they learn that signal, then you got it made. Yeah, Greg Ward told me. He says, you used to psych me out. He said, you get up there by the entry and you spin your horse, And I didn't, I didn't realize I was, making it harmful for other guys. I was just trying to get the horse ready,
You weren't trying to intimidate anybody?
No, I wasn't trying to intimidate.
I don't believe you.
It may look that way, but I didn't.